Hello Art 1-2, here is your nose demonstration from the facial feature shading practice. This already has a value map for you. It's very subtle. If you can barely see it, you might have to kind of draw it in for yourself, but remember we want to get rid of the value map, so it's supposed to be barely there. The first thing I look for in noses is where's the core shadow, so where's the darkest part. So this kind of curves at the bottom and curves over, which then separates the nostril from the bridge of the nose. I also have a little bit of core shadow on either side of the nostril, and then the core shadow then lightens and fades up along the side to separate the top of the nose from the side of the nose, or the bridge of the nose from the side of the nose. So we're going to start with 6B, and we're going to start along where the value map is, kind of fading up. Then I would add they're kind of like cast shadows on the side, I guess you could say. And there's shadow that curves underneath the nostril. So it's really you just like analyzing really, really closely. And so I'm going to fade out into my midtone. Okay. Then I'm looking at right underneath the nostril. The nostril itself, how it's darker along the top. Kind of fades down a little bit. So I'm just going to add the shadowy parts first. And this is with 6B. Then I'm going to use more of the side of the pencil. So I'm going to hold it horizontally so I can use the whole side of the graphite. And I'm going to create the rest of the core shadow. Fading up, I'm going to gently lighten my pressure and create the darker midtones. All right, then I'd probably switch pencils because the rest of the value is really subtle. So you could use old school wooden pencil or 2B pencil, and later on it will depend on your skin tone, like what pencils you use. But for this one, these midtones are fairly light, so I'm going to use 2B. Okay, then I'm paying a little closer attention to what does it look like underneath the nostril and where does it connect into the shadow. And the tip of your nose usually has some value because the top of the nose is kind of blocking some of the light. So the underside tip. And then this is a good example, like over here of reflected light. There's some reflected light there. All right, so then again with the small blender, I always blend in the core shadow first. You want to keep the shape of it, so it looks kind of shapy. Then you're going to use more of the side of the blender, and you're going to adjust your pressure. I'm just going to gray down a little bit. bridge. All right, then we're ready for adjustments. Actually, I'm sorry, let me blend this over a little bit. Okay. Okay, so since this is such a tiny area, I'm going to work mostly with mechanical pencil. So I'm looking at where are my darkest areas. I'm going to add in some of the subtleties that are happening and doing another layer over the darkest parts. So actually, I'm going to go off padding for this. Just be careful. Use a circular motion, because I really want these tiny details to stay. And if you can get the tiny details, you know, smooth by hand, you don't have to use a blender. I'm going to bring that up a little bit. I'm really looking at like how this kind of comes over, like this shadow comes over to a point that then connects with like this area. So kind of refining that part. And then in general, I feel like this part should be a little bit darker. The downside of using copy paper that we would use in the Xerox machine is you can't really build up your layers, which is always why we use drawing paper. So we're just going to try our best. Let's try our best. Because even when I'm pressing hard with mechanical, it's still difficult. All right, so then I feel like this nostril looks a little bit big compared to the image. So I'm going to bring this in a little bit. Bring that part out. Okay, looking over here, I feel like this part of the nostril curves into or curves out too much, so I'm going to bring it in. So you're going to do your slight adjustments with the shape for the form. I'm just going to kind of touch over my darkest parts. And then I'm ready to erase out. I'm almost ready to erase out subtle highlights and reflected light. Okay. I think this got a little too high here. The nice thing about copy paper is it erases really easily, but okay, then I'm going to fade that out a little bit more. All right, so then you definitely would want to use mechanical pencil top eraser or Trade ID for the little pencil top eraser. So I'm going to draw back in, like there's a little bit of reflected light over here, a little piece here that I missed, a little lighter. And then this highlight connects to highlight on the bottom of the nostril. Like this part curves out a little bit more. There's some reflected light. I'm sorry, no, this is a highlight. On that side of the nose. And then I would look at like comparing value, like this can get dulled down just a little bit. And then I would look for any other values I can draw in with my blender, because the noses are weird because it's really just all value. and making some adjustments. And I would say that's pretty good. I mean, it's a little fuzzy, but this is really kind of hard to refine. I could go back, but I don't really want to outline. And I could add another layer to my darkest values, dark, dark, darkest, and then don't blend. Okay. All right, so there's your nose demonstration. Hopefully it looks somewhat like this nose. And then of course your nose will look different, but the basics are the same. We always look for a core shadow. You know, you kind of fade out into your midtones, you erase out your highlights, you look for tiny little details in the end.